Welcome to the stage, it's Nolie and the crew. A tech is paradise where the nerds break through. With gadgets and the gossip, we're lighting up the scene. A point of view so fresh, it's like a techie dream. Plug in your ears, let the knowledge flow.
From code to choreography, today we're meeting with special guest, CEO and founder of Dark Art Software, discussing his new product, Tripp the Lite, which is a virtual reality product teaching you to ballroom dance.
Let's get ready to dance. Take my hand. Nice. Let's dance. You've got it. That's it. Great, just like that. Nice work. Wow. Isn't this song dope? Watch me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Nerd's Point of View, where I am going to be interviewing a very special guest today of Dark Arts Software, as you can tell on his t-shirt. And we're going to be diving into a new software platform that he's been developing that incorporates ballroom dancing inside the world of virtual reality. Welcome, Patrick. I'm glad to have you on the show and dive into what you've been up to.
Thanks, Nolie. I'm psyched to be here.
All right. Before we kick this off, I'd love to get some background on kind of your origin story and what drew you into the world of VR and how did that evolve into founding Dark Art Software?
Yeah, sure. So ever since I was a little boy, I was intrigued by computers and video games and the promise of a VR one day, right? Like I remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool to be in Super Mario Brothers? And dream about that kind of stuff as a little kid. Anyway, as I, went to college for engineering, which was surprisingly significantly more like a history class than it was anything technical because it was like kind of post the 90s boom and bust of VR. But, I kept the dream alive and got into gaming and kind of gravitated towards those kinds of projects, like sort of like advanced tech projects. Microsoft for a long time on the Kinect camera, HoloLens, Meta headset. When it became viable, like I was ready to go over there.
Yeah. I believe you actually worked with one of my developers. Was it on the HoloLens? Because you knew one of my developers, Ryan.
It was at Meta. It was at Meta working on what I think they now call like the Orion. But it was, prototyping, like simulating stuff. Yeah, that would be able to be run on that kind of a AR headset.
What was the very first VR application that you were working on, like in the very beginning?
Let's see. Probably the first thing I ever did, I had a startup before, and at one point we put the DK2 in, like we took the Oculus DK2 and just sort of like dropped it in there to see how it would look. On like what was just like a mobile phone 3D game. So I wouldn't really call that like a big project, but then probably the first big one was when I went to the HoloLens, but then from there I worked on some music apps, like one called Groover. It was like a music VR visualizer app, and a bunch of others, like as the tech evolved. But that was kind of like the first like big one. Right, HoloLens was prototyping. We were trying to figure out how it works. How do you interact with VR and AR? And then, like some actual products after that.
And so ballroom dancing in VR is a unique concept. What inspired you to blend this classical art form with immersive technology.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I knew VR was a thing for me, and I didn't know what I was going to build, but I knew I was going to take Dark Arts to become a company that makes products, not just consulting, which it had been before. And I had 3 or 4 game ideas, and I liked all of them, but none of them were like inherently compelling me to go build them. They were neat ideas that needed a lot more, but then I was just at my wife's cousin's wedding and we were dancing on the dance floor, you know, and everybody's just having fun, like dancing with each other, family members, and, you know, spinning each other around and just having a good time. And it was like at that very moment that I knew what I was going to make. And I realized it hadn't been done before. And I realized that I had just enough ballroom experience, having done salsa classes and stuff, and then had enough of the right technical and design experience to manage the project, to like do the animations, and enough music experience to figure out how to put it all together. Right. So it's just sort of a lucky confluence of, you know, having the right skills and the experience, but then just realizing it's what I should be doing was kind of a lucky break.
And
I would have made something else.
I guess I say ballroom dancing, but I've had the pleasure of using your product, and you also incorporated the thriller dance. So it's not all.
Yeah, and now we've got multiple modes. So the thriller dance is part of what we call like mirror me mode, right? So we're gonna have a whole suite of pop and dance songs where you're watching your partner and, like, you know, getting led on like what, like kind of like club moves to do, as well as the ballroom stuff with the salsa and all that. Yeah, and we have teaching now too, so we can like teach you the basics of salsa.
Walk us through that development process of creating these dancers that you're interacting with, and the technology behind it.
Yeah, so from a model perspective, we have a handful of real world professionals that in both dance, music, and like video gaming who have shared their likeness with us for being the character models for the game. But in terms of putting it all together, a friend of mine gave us a character model that was sort of just like a white mannequin, right? And I hired a technical animator, and, you know, started telling him how to salsa moves work. And, you know, we just sort of prototyped our way into a programmatically driven partner dance. That was kind of how we kicked it all off. And once I knew it was viable, then, you know, I grew the team, and, you know, we looked into machine learning and like other ways of doing the control and stuff like that. But that's kind of how it started. So we decided I just had a tech animator, and every day we would meet, and he would do a bunch of Unity code and prototyping and send it over to me, and I'd mess with it. And eventually we got it upright, like literally the character would dance with you and not fly away or, you know, crumple. That was the origin. And
you use AI for the training too, right? I think we talked about that. Can you share how the AI works under the hood?
Yeah, totally. So the game is driven by like a multitude. It's actually a few different ways that we control the partners and how they respond to you. But because it's just such a complicated problem, right? So with respect to the machine learning part, what we do is we have a couple motion capture suits, and we put 2 dancers in them at the same time, and they dance with each other. So they do standard salsa moves. And what we do is we take that and run all of that animation data through machine learning. And from the leader perspective, which would map to you as the player in the headset, we use the inputs of where that skeleton's head, you know, the animated character's head and hands were, in order to be the control that trains it. And then that, you know, inherently through the machine learning process trains the animation that should play on the partner at the same time. So if you were to raise your hands up and do the signals for a turn, right, you do that enough times, machine learning figures out that if the hands are held and you do this sort of a circle, right, that it should play through this set of animations that it's got. And, you know, then we layer IK stuff on top so that it's snappy. And then on top of that, we have traditional AI, which is like we have a system for being able to do it manually as well. When I say manually, I mean programming it, right? So if we want to add a move in, we can do it through system that works a little bit the way like modern fighting game input systems work. So we can kind of track your motion over time and then decide what to do.
And how has incorporating AI into your creative process kind of changed your thought process on the whole building experience for VR?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, ever since the beginning of the VR and AR revolution, I've always believed that machine learning is critical to making the experiences in VR and AR, whether or not they're entertainment or utility, like walking down the street or going to the grocery store, actually viable, right? It's too hard to like program these things forever and ever and ever. And so I really think for AR and VR to meet their potential, you have to accept VR and AI and ML, right? So what happened, like for us, it was the hardest part about machine learning for this project is that it's a lot harder to build a machine learning system than it is to just use one, right? So usually you use something like ChatGPT or somebody else's project for something that isn't necessarily LLM. It comes to you from tons of training and tons of tweaking, and somebody else has already built it and spent the time to really build a working model. And it can be a significant engineering workload as well as a significant data problem, right? So Microsoft, when we worked on the Kinect camera, we trained it. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm aware of how it works and aware of how the runtime works. I worked on that a bit. But, they just recorded tons of video of people and segmented it out and fed it through a machine learning model 12 years ago or so. And that is how the Kinect camera worked. And it all came down to having a lot of data and, experienced engineers on the team to build the system. So for us as a small company, that's been the biggest challenge, has been like getting enough data, because we have to get pros in the suits, as well as like having enough engineering talent, with enough experience to make the thing not take 6 days to run when it's collecting data, and then run fast enough on the VR headset. So that's why we've got a hybrid approach. So, we have a system that, as long as we can figure out how to, tell the game what the patterns are that it needs to look for, in terms of your motion and whether or not you're touching the partner here, holding this hand or that hand or whatever, that we can build up moves, just like the ML does. But, so that's our two hybrid approaches. So it's like old AI. When I say AI, I mean like the way we used to program AI in games.
Right.
Like manually built an algorithm, built like a buffering system, and try to like give it an idea of what's happening so it can decide what to do. And then the harder to debug, but when it works beautifully. Machine learning model, like the feet of your partner in the machine learning model is perfect. Like it's always does the best thing, right? So and Meta's doing stuff like that too. So you'll see a lot of their auto feed stuff is like beautiful. And
was there anything that surprised you with AI that came, like that you weren't expecting when you were doing this whole training, and it did something just kind of wonky?
Yeah, it does interesting stuff. I think the most surprising is actually when it works, right? Because when it works so nicely that it's unexpected, right? I think every time you train a model and it takes all night or whatever, and it's only got one little tweak from the day before, or the data's only changed a little bit from the day before, you don't expect to see these big jumps in quality. But sometimes especially because it's such an intensive front load, right? It's not like you just change the code and in less than 5 minutes you're testing it, right? It's like, okay, we want to tweak this one parameter, 8 hours or something of training goes on again, right? There's no sort of quick payoff or like gratification of like, oh man, because there's tools to tell you if it's working well, which I learned about and didn't really know about, but the proof is still in the pudding, right? There's graphs that tell you if things are converging how you think they should be, but until you test it, it doesn't matter. right? So it can be surprising that it's so good when it works, and not mechanical and much more like natural. I think that's really the most surprising. I do think I was also surprised at like how much more data we would need. I kind of thought we'd be able to get like a handful of copies of, you know, this dance move from a few different people, and then maybe just add noise to it. Right? It's not that simple. Noise isn't good enough. You really need like different height people who do these things differently, right? Because it doesn't tell you how it's classified. It's sort of like it's really hard to get that input that maps one-to-one to an output the way that, you know, like code does, right? Or like a database, like push these inputs, you get this output. It's like, okay, we want to do a turn. You can't just tell it like run the turn algorithm, right? Which is what the code. It's like once you've detected the inputs, run the turn, right? It doesn't work like that. It's really hard to. So it's yeah, but the feet were perfect. Like I couldn't believe how good the feet looked.
And how close are you? You're not to market yet, correct?
No, that's correct. But we did just announce that we're gonna. So we were at AWE, Augmented World Expo, a couple weeks ago, and we have some announcements, and we won Best in Show for the Gaming Hub, which was great.
Oh, congratulations! That's exciting.
Yeah. So we are gonna ship in the summer. We don't have our exact launch date yet, and we'll be on the Quest store. So Quest, 3, 3S, and 2 is our target. Yeah.
And how do you think that the product will evolve as you go on? I'm assuming that you have a roadmap and other features that you're going to want to bring in. You kind of slightly mentioned the different dances and that sort of thing, but.
Yep. So we did a Kickstarter previously, and we kind of laid out everything that will go into like the V 1.0 there. So, we'll have salsa, we'll have teaching mode, we'll have a handful of different mirror me modes, and then special effects combos and things like that. So like gaming mode, I guess. And to start, we'll have a couple dancers, and we have 2 more coming on later. And it really kind of depends on like how far along we get between now and the end of the summer. We'll have all of the core mechanics, and then once everything that we've promised on the Kickstarter for 1.0 is out, right? Then we'll add on more dances. Swing will probably be the next one. It's the next most popular. And we have like lots of other ideas, of course, for things that are in the roadmap that, kind of what we need to do though is get it out there and see what sticks the most, right? Like, making it a game based on partner dancing and mirror dancing is the best approach for like the gaming market that already exists that's large, but we really think that the I want to learn is also like going to be significant, but we have to obviously see, right? Because we know a bunch of gamers on these things. We don't know if a bunch of non-gamers, but who do salsa type work want to do. But there's a lot of exercise games that are popular that are not traditional video games. So we kind of wanted to appeal to everyone, meaning you're a gamer, you're interested in playing it for the the challenge and the fun, like Beat Saber or Guitar Hero or Dance Dance Revolution or something like that. Or maybe you bought it because you're interested in going out dancing and you want to get a private at home lesson without having to necessarily like go dance with a stranger or be in public. It doesn't feel like you kind of get it. And that is another thing that we're offering with it.
I think that you and I are in a similar boat with our applications in that we are trying to appeal to potentially converting non-gamers into gamers in a way, right? Like people that don't have a headset and they'd be willing to give it a try for these different experiences. Absolutely. And so that's where I guess time will tell, like VR adoption, right? Back, I think in, what was it, 2017, we had a boom, but then it kind of died off. And a lot of the people that came from that world, they're like, okay, is it going to have another comeback? And we're waiting to see. I mean, the numbers look promising, and Meta is obviously putting a lot of money towards getting VR to be more mainstream. But what are your thoughts on the future of not just VR, but also, you know, AR and mixed reality over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think if I look at them separately, I think AR will be the bigger market, which makes sense. It's the one that could replace the cell phone or have a significant impact on the cell phone market. So like your glasses, right? When those are like accurate, tracking your eyeball, projecting content into the real world in real time wherever you are, right? Then, hey, you could just dance with your partner here in your space. You don't need to go into full VR, right? I think for VR, I think like fully immersive, you're somewhere else VR. I think there's a lot of different ways it will evolve, but entertainment, there is something special about VR, right? That's different than AR. Like I can put you anywhere in VR, right?
Right.
So I think in the short term, the ML to kind of increase the liveliness of the worlds is really what I see. So even some of the best console and PC games, because of your limited inputs with the controllers and you know how your character can move, you know there's like a limited number of animations that you need on the NPCs in the world, and you know you can't do anything you want to them. There's you're talking to them through buttons and things like that. So I think turning on ML to allow significantly richer amounts of generative responses from enemies, NPCs, how they respond even in the world, especially once you're just talking, right? That will I think that's necessary to not just make it feel like, to really evolve the medium, right? You know, to not just make it feel like you're putting on a headset and now you're in some game that you played on a console or a PC, right? Because if you walk up to that guy and stab them in the kneecap, that might not be a thing that you could do in the console version because there's just no way to do it. And so they'll just stand there. Of course, it doesn't have to be violent. It could be anything, right? Like you're just too close or you're getting far away. And, you know, just the way that they look at you, the way they talk, the responses, having that fed through ML will make it, we'll get that immersion to match the visual immersion, right? That's where I see that going. And I think there's some cool stuff in location-based VR because, you know, co-located location-based VR is really cool. There's just a lot of stuff you can do there. And I've been seeing that grow and I think it'll continue to grow. Yeah, but AR, you know, AR and MR are the big, I think AR in particular is the bigger thing for the companies like Google and Samsung, right? And, you know, they just announced their, you know, new platforms for VR and AR. And I think that's great. I think it's great to have these guys building stuff that other companies can consume and put together glasses and headsets with.
As it pertains to VR, I think the replayability because of AI and the interaction you can have with the characters and whatnot, because every time you go in, depending on what you say or do, you're going to get a different output, right? So I think that is really exciting to see how this is going to evolve. It won't be so canned. It'll be much more responsive to whatever it is that you choose to say or do when in the application. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Yeah, I think once the voice is integrated too, even on consoles, they'll use LLMs to have way better dialogue. But the whole interaction model is where the characters kind of still feel like robots in VR, even if it's in some of the top games, right? They have a limited set of ways that you can interact with them. And you can't just make everything a ragdoll, right? You have to really build the product around how you want it to be. It's different if it's a dance simulator versus a zombie game, right? Versus anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as lessons learned for those listening that are maybe fellow entrepreneurs with a startup, what are some things that you would say have been great fails or lessons learned, as well as wins that you've learned from that have helped propel you forward to get you to this point?
Yeah. In terms of I think a big learning for me was how hard the ML would be. I thought that it was going to have like a short window of time setting up and then just be crank turning. And it's too heavy of a project for a small company to take on because we're building our own. That's one of my lessons. I think if there's something you can leverage from ML, then go for it. We use it for a lot of, prototyping our concept art, right? Things like that. And that's great. And the machine learning stuff has shown an enormous amount of potential. And we will use it. It's just, but it was probably 10 times larger of a product than I thought it was going to be. And then the big wins, I think, and things to just keep in mind are like, just don't give up. If you know you've got something that you really believe in, like you're the only person who's going to keep it alive if you're a founder, and you want to find people that believe in it, right? So if you find people who believe in it, who want to go on the journey with you, right? I watched a documentary on Star Wars the other day, and it was about like how they did the very first Star Wars, and it was just like this like ragtag group of people around LA who like knew each other, but were in like their boring jobs and basically wanted to do something crazy. And they had no idea if they were going to be able to pull it off, right? They didn't know. They had to build the tech as they were creating the effects, right? And all that. So it was just it reminds me a little bit of having been in the startups that I've been in, because it's like, you have to find people who aren't willing to like think it's impossible. People who want it and are like, no matter what, we're going to do this. So that's a good one. And just keep cranking. Like it's hard. It's always hard. The challenges could be in financing or skill set or just number of hours in a day, right? I think, you have to have a high bar if you want to make something complicated. And so having it like at least enough experience to like keep the wheels on, right? It can be tempting to staff up with a bunch of junior folks because it feels like you can get all that done. You can, but you have to be careful that you have the structure to, pull it off without it falling apart. And that is always a complicated one because sometimes, the cost of somebody who's got more experience can be many times over, right? Or they're older and they have a lot more expenses in their life that they need to cover, and it can make it tricky. So when you find those people who want to work with you, who have experience and are a little stable in their lives, that really can make a huge amount of difference because they can really help keep it upright, keep it moving forward, keep your, more junior staff like aligned, right, on the heading in the right direction, maybe not going off in the weeds as much. And, that's a big one. If you can find believers who know what to do, and that's exactly what was in that Star Wars documentary, right? It was like this guy was doing effects for toothpaste commercials, but he knew how to do everything, and they got, you know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. So
if people want to learn more about your company, where would they need to go?
Yes, darkartssoftware.com. We have videos of the game up there called Tripp the Lite. We're on all the socials. Usually it's Dark Arts Software. I think we are on Instagram and LinkedIn. We might be Dark Arts SW on a couple of them. Check out the website. And then we're going to be having some more announcements in the future coming up. Next month, we're pretty sure we'll be in an Upload VR showcase. That's what we understand. So we'll have some more announcements then.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for talking about your project. I think it sounds really exciting, and you're using AI in a kind of a new, unique way. So it just shows the possibilities, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
Absolutely, Nolie. Thank you for having me.